Our first session this afternoon is a WSDS corporate conclave, and we're going to be looking at addressing climate change through waste management initiatives. Now, often waste is seen as deeply unsexy, quite frankly, but it is something that we have to deal with. If we do it the wrong way, it can contribute to climate change, it can make it worse. If we do it the right way, it can actually improve our efforts to tackle climate change. It can help us sequester carbon, and so on. So how do we make sure we do it right and we don't do it wrong? Well, we've got an excellent expert panel for you this afternoon. Our panelists are Ms. Henriette Fageman. I hope I pronounced that vaguely correctly. I've been practicing all my Indian pronunciations. I forgot to do yours. Henriette is the Environment, Climate and Energy Councillor on the European Union delegation to India. We have Dr. Sadan Kumar Ghosh, who is Professor and former head of the Mechanical Engineering Department at Yadavpur University. We have Mr. Nitesh Mehta, who is co-founder and director of Green Chemistry Foundation, and Mr. Ashwin Shroff, chairman and MD of Excel Industries Limited. And to chair that lot, we've got Sanjay Mitra, who's Professor of Practice at IIT Delhi. So over to you, Sanjay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session on addressing climate change through waste management initiatives. Climate change is, of course, a matter of great concern for us. India has to address this from many angles. First is urbanization. With the rapid urbanization, we have this huge municipal solid waste problem and municipal wastewater problem. Solid waste and municipal wastewater are very important for India, and the treatment technologies and the treatment methodologies will have a huge impact. To give you some numbers, in India, we generated more than 58 million tons of municipal solid waste in 2018. Only 27% was treated. In this domain, sources in the greenhouse gas emissions impacting climate change arise from waste collection and transportation, waste disposal, open burning of waste, landfill fires, and waste disposal. And this MSW is projected to reach 165 million metric tons by 2031. GHG emissions from solid waste disposal alone amounted to 13.75 million ton CO2 equivalent in 2011. As far as the wastewater domain is concerned, the Central Pollution Control Board estimated that our country generates 62,000 million liters of wastewater every day. The treatment capacity of our city is much, much lower. Only about 18,000 million liters get treated, and nearly 70% of the untreated sewage is directly discharged. GHG emissions from municipal wastewater are also very substantial. Proper management of waste with the concept of 4 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, and recovery, can substantially help reduce the burden as well as impact the increasing waste quantities. Augmented treatment capabilities and efficient treatments of wastewater can help address the social, health, and climatic impact. We have a distinguished panel here today, and I look forward to some very good suggestions so that we can make a good roadmap for moving ahead on these urgent topics.
Okay, so thank you very much. So my name is Henriette, and as was mentioned, I'm working for the European Union here in India since 2014. I'm responsible for everything that is clean and green. So one of the things that I've been working on for these years is something that we call the India-EU Resource Efficiency Initiative. So rather than looking just at waste, we look at resources in a broad manner. We've been involved in working with Niti Aayog on drafting India's resource efficiency strategy, and we have also been now involved with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change on developing a resource efficiency policy. So resource efficiency is a nice way of looking at waste, and it's a nice way of linking things because it actually goes across the life cycle of our product. So instead of trying to solve the problem of waste, we are trying to look at all phases of the product life cycle, as I said. So designing products that are better, have a longer lifetime, designing products that can be more easily dismantled, can be more easily reused so that the waste is minimized, and thereby the problem is minimized. And this is actually really important in the context of climate change. We often hear about all the things that we are doing for energy, for climate action in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and so on, which of course is really, really important. And we heard already some numbers of greenhouse gases linked to waste, but I have other numbers here that actually says that the greenhouse gas emissions that comes from materials have increased from 15% in 1995 to 23% in 2015. So this means that really it's not an insignificant component of the general greenhouse gas issue, challenge that we are facing. So by having a more efficient use of materials, better waste management, better recycling options, etc., we will really be able to do something significantly about climate change. So that's a very important message. Then I would like to also mention that in Europe we have since December last year a new policy which we call the European Green Deal. And actually this is really a way of trying to have a cross-cutting approach, a cross-cutting way of handling both climate and resource issues across the whole of European Union. So it has a number of different components, and I would like to just read them out for you, just to have an understanding of how comprehensive this is. So first of all, it's about increasing the general climate ambition. Then it's about ensuring the supply of clean, affordable, and secure energy, mobilizing industry for clean and circular economy, so resource efficiency, circular economy, building and renovating in an energy and resource efficient way, zero pollution ambition, preserving and restoring ecosystems, and then from farm to fork, another component which is about healthy and environmentally friendly food, and accelerating the shift to smart and sustainable mobility. So I think all of these components is actually are actually completely in line with also the cooperation that we have with India and what India is also working on. So just to show that it's really similar the way that we are approaching these two things in our part of the world. So I will not go into too many details on this now because we have a very short panel and many interesting speakers, but I would just like to highlight that this is an important cooperation priority for us with India and of course across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask my colleagues, fellow panelists to speak. The idea is that my colleagues will speak for about 5 minutes each, and then we'll have an open question and answer session. And kindly identify yourself when you ask the question, and also let us know which of the members panelists you would like to address that question to. So I'll start by requesting Professor Sanjay Ghosh.
Thank you, Chair, my co-panelist, and good afternoon to all the delegates here. Climate change, resource consumption, and GHG emission, these three are very correlated. And if we want to reduce the effect of climate change, we have to have a multi-pronged approach. So I like to highlight some of the points with respect to the waste management in Indian context is concerned. The first thing, which traditionally we have in India, is use as much as possible and throw away as it is unusable. The first conceptual change and the paradigm shift in India must be there, that in the concept to the realization, change the consumption pattern and try to make the recirculation of the resources as maximum as possible. But whenever we talk about recycling, we don't take into account many a time that the design at the initial stage. We cannot go for many multi-recycling unless and otherwise we redesign the whole thing at the initial stage, considering that we have to recycle, and recycle again, keeping the quality. So in that way, circular economy is one of the very important issues which needs to be implemented, as we have seen in all the 6 rules on waste management which released in 2016 in India. we should tap today, because you know that many a time we tell that the municipalities are not working. It is really true, but on the other hand, we have stories like in 2019, 4,237 municipalities have participated in the survection through that Swachh Bharat mission, and who are initiating, and of course initiated, the effective waste management. So in that way, this is a high time to inculcate, to strengthen the waste management in those cities, and also to strengthen other cities in line with those things. You know that nowadays it has been seen that many of the municipalities and municipal corporations are asked for bioremediation of the existing landfill site. In my opinion, this is in most of the cases wastage of money. This is expensive and huge money is involved, huge time is involved in bioremediation of the existing dumping ground. Instead, we must spend money on developing awareness, segregation of waste, recycling processes, research on recycling, and most importantly, the RDF center, the MRF center, which can recycle, and recycle. But other most important is, most of the people who are on the ground in the work are not trained. If you go to the municipal officers, if you go to the government in any of the state government who are dealing with the municipal affairs, they are not having adequate knowledge on what is recycling. And as a matter of fact, most of the NGOs who doesn't have any competence are involved in the waste management in small cities. So the capacity building in our country is one of the very important issues which should be addressed very carefully by the government as well as other agencies. We have to encourage, because you know that in Delhi, we have CD recycling plant for more than 1 decade. But from last year, piles of CD waste recycling products are kept unsold. If we are encouraged to produce recycled products, but if it is not sold, then there will be no taker of the plant for the recycling. So in that way, this is one of the issues that recycling products must be encouraged by government agencies and others, so that the quality of the recycled product as well as the selling of the recycled products are taking place. And the last point, I'll not take much time, we can discuss later on. You know that legislative framework, we have a very good legislative framework at this stage of time. We have 6 waste management rules which has been released in 2016, and we have SBM, Swachh Bharat mission. But we have to see that the implementation of the tools which have been prescribed or given in the legislation are taken care very seriously, specifically the EPR policy, Extended Producer Responsibility Policy. It is not only for the electronic waste but also other products. It is very much necessary. These are some of the points which I like to highlight now, but later on we can come back to other points. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shroff.
At the outset, I would like to thank Terry for inviting me and my company to participate. The subject of our session is waste management. So I'll share my thoughts on the waste management. Number one, climate change is very much with all of us, and many causes, and many of the wastes are causes, and also they provide remedies. I will be talking about 3 types of waste, 2 of them solid and 1 is a liquid. The municipal solid waste, the agro waste or the crop residues that we have, and the third one is sewage water. In 2 of these, my company and our group has done a lot of pioneering work, and I would briefly share that with you. But because before we do that, let's say how some of them are big causes of problems and the climate change. Municipal solid waste, which we have a lot of experience in, not only the way it has been practiced has been very, very lousy, very, very bad. We just collect, transport and dump. That has been the so-called processing. It's not really processing. Even the 27% that you mentioned, I think most of it is just being collected and being dumped. It's not being treated. And it continues to be a problem either at the source during transportation and also at the dump yards. So what has been going on is not right, and we have tried to intervene and we have tried to find some solutions. Agro waste, which all of you people from Delhi are suffering from daily, the burning of the crop residues by Punjabi and the Haryanvi farmers, and that causing the pollution for all of you is another one. And the sewage, of course, we have a lot of sewage. The government, the authorities are obliged to give not only good quality water, but at a highly subsidized price, and with the result that the water is taken as very cheap resource and a lot of it is wasted. Now what do we do about the treatment? As I said, for MSW, the municipal solid waste, the only practice that has been is to collect the untreated mixed waste from wherever it is generated, transport it and take it to a dump yard, which are getting filled up and creating legacy heaps. The first intervention that we did as a company was, can we treat it at where the dump yard is? So we were given places, and based on our technology, about 15 plants came up all over the country. What we did was that the most problematic part of the municipal solid waste is the organic fraction, the food waste, what begins to smell, what begins to immediately generate pathogens and all that. This was one dimension. The other dimension, which is now in the context of climate change, which is coming up, is that it generates a lot of methane and carbon dioxide. Methane, where it is lying untreated during transportation, the vehicles which carry, they generate a lot of CO2, and when it is dumped, it continues to generate methane and CO2. So it was causing a lot of problem, and what we did was we converted the organic fraction into compost, and just at that time the soil health as an issue was coming up in India. Soil health cards were being issued to the farmers to know what is the quality of their soil, and the compost is something which can improve the quality of soil very much. So this was one thing. But as we continued our journey, we found that why should the whole garbage get mixed and then transported and just dumped? Instead of that, if we can go to the source where the segregation will be so easy, and then you can treat it, only that fraction which needs to be treated. So we developed very small machines. The brochures are available outside in case any of you would be interested. I was happy to hear from Professor that in his university one of our machines is operating, but these machines have been there. Even that was not enough. So then people said that, oh, I don't want to buy your machine, I don't want to operate. So we are now offering a mobile service. Our machines, which are very small, they are installed on trucks. The truck goes from building to building, from place to place, and treats the garbage at source, the organic fraction, which is the most problematic. So that's one thing that we have done. And greenhouse gas generation also stops. We have found that when we treat it immediately, the methane generation comes down quite a lot. It gets even eliminated. So it can both contribute to the climate change reversal and also better cities and better agriculture. So this is the MSW part. Coming to the agro waste, as I mentioned, Delhi has been suffering from the pollution, air pollution, because of the burning of the rice stubble. Now, rice stubble burns because it has got calorific value. And not only rice creates the agro waste or the crop residue. Any crop that you grow, you only harvest a part of it, 20, 30, 40%. what happens to the rest of it? It is either burnt locally in the chulas, or it is fed to the animals to a small extent. But a good part, huge quantities are available. We are talking about coal as one of the fossil fuels causing the climate change. This is also a solid fuel. If you can just bricate it and use it in place of coal, I think it can do quite a lot to help reverse the climate change, and it will be part of the circular economy. So that's number 2. And number 3 is the sewage water treatment. Again, sewage is generated in huge quantities because we supply water in huge quantities. Sewage is something you can convert into biogas, which is a well-known technology, but it's not being done. The current practice is to put up a very big capacity sewage treatment plants, STPs. Many of them are not functioning, and what is happening is it's just treated and disposed of either in sea, river, whatever. So we don't recycle it. It's a highly recyclable resource. We can use it for agriculture, we can use it in our houses for flushing, etc. Again, in our group company, and the stall is there in the IFAT exhibition, any of you would like to visit. It's called Transchem Agritech, that's the name of the company. They have done wonderful work on biotreatment of the sewage using earthworms, using microbes, and using wooden chips. And up to 1 million liters per day capacity plants are there, relatively small, they are not very big. So we have come to believe that decentralized solutions at source are far better than very huge plants and all that. So this is in short the kind of work that we have done, and we believe that when done, I think it can contribute quite a lot to recycling of the resource which is getting wasted, and to also stop the climate change. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I represent an organization called Green Chemistry Foundation. So we work with the stakeholders of chemical industry to basically implement a concept called green chemistry, where you try to reduce environmental pollution at the source. So while we don't have too many people from chemical industry here, but I call it an industry which is like an air. It's there everywhere, serving all other industries, but it's not kind of usually in the background, serving like a supply chain. So while we don't contribute in terms of percentage a lot to the carbon emission, but at the same time, obviously solid waste, liquid waste, gaseous pollution all put together, we definitely the chemical industry is doing whatever it can. So I don't want to get into too many details, but just highlight few broad initiatives that overall chemical industry is doing. So it might be some of those initiatives could be relevant for some other industry sectors as well, and then make 2 points which are related to this entire mindset issue. One, there is a clear shift that we are observing in the chemical industry, moving from end of the pipe treatment towards addressing problems at the source level. That's what green chemistry is all about. So we are in the last about 5 to 10 years, we are clearly seeing a shift in the management of chemical industry, where people are moving towards at source reduction and trying to rely as much less as possible on end of the pipe treatment. And there are various strategies and initiatives that are being done around that. For example, one is process optimization, trying to reduce raw material consumption, solvent consumption, water consumption, everything at the source level as much as it can be done, and also improving process efficiency so that the waste that is getting generated per kg of the product that is being manufactured is as less as possible. The second is trying to recover various kinds of byproducts or solvents or some kind of unreacted raw materials that are present in the waste streams. So either it could be reused back into the process, or it could be given to some other industry for as a raw material. So that's another set of initiatives that are going on in the chemical industry to look at sustainability and reducing the climate change impacts through waste management. The third is in the area of energy, both in terms of using less energy intensive processes, on one side, and on the other side of it is trying to look at how do you move from, so most of the not most, actually all chemical industry need boilers. So we are seeing a trend of a lot of companies moving from earlier using coal and wood fired boilers to now moving into boilers which are either run by gas or by bagasse or some other kind of a biomass. Another initiative that is kind of picking up is a concept called industrial ecology, where waste of one industry is kind of trying to, there's a kind of an initiative to match make with another industry which is using similar kind of a waste. And if there is some way that both of them are willing to tweak around their processes so that this guy's waste can be used by the other guy. So that concept of industrial ecology is something that has been kind of picking up. Water is another area which has become a big time focus for chemical industry in the last few years. In terms of there are initiatives to reduce, there are initiatives to reuse, there are initiatives to recycle, all this happening around. The two key things that I wanted to point out, in terms of mindset was there's a choice that not only chemical industry but any industry has, is one to voluntarily move towards sustainability. At some point of time, the regulations are going to catch up if you don't do it voluntarily. The advantage of not waiting for it to become mandatory and do it voluntarily is that you get time to research, you get time to collaborate, you get time to do R&D to come out with an innovative solution which could actually be a cost saving for you. If the industry waits for something to happen mandatory to them, there's no time for R&D, you'll end up doing end of the pipe treatment most of the cases, which is a cost. So that's one place where the industry needs to realize that, that rather than waiting for something to come out as a legislation or as a regulation and then forced upon you to do it and go for something called zero liquid discharge, it's always better to do it proactively and voluntarily. The second point is, whenever we are looking at waste management, normally the approach that we have as an industry is, that there's a specific problem, there's a kind of a waste stream that is coming out, whether it is liquid, solid or gaseous. I need to treat it, I need to deal with this issue. So it's usually being looked at as one small issue that needs to be treated, that needs to be taken care of so that the production doesn't get affected. Instead of that, if there is an approach of looking at it from the perspective of the climate change or its impact on water or its impact on the sustainable development goals, then what happens is at the ground level you still may be solving the same problem, or maybe but what happens is if you are looking at it from SDGs, if you are looking at it from the perspective of climate change, if you are looking at it from the perspective of sustainability, then your horizons get quite broadened. The number of solutions that you and I would explore change, the entire approach changes. So while we may still be solving the same problem, but then we are now looking at a much higher, we are coming from a much higher altitude to address the problem. So those are the key two mindset issues which we see a change, but I think the change needs to come at a much more accelerated pace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nilesh. Now we are open to the audience for questions. Let me add my penny worth of stuff. As Secretary of Road Transport, we had tried to use plastic waste in road construction. It turns out that it worked. We used about 7 tons of plastic for every 4-lane kilometer. And last year's target was 350 kilometers. So far the ministry has done about 85. But it's still at a very low level. It's not really, even if we had to do 10,000 kilometers of roads a year, we would only be absorbing 70,000 tons of plastic, which is not small, but which is also not, big in terms of impact. So I wonder whether we can intensify the use of plastic in road construction. I had 2 other queries, and if the audience is welcome to give a reply. One is, what do we do with landfills? Because I used to work in a very congested, crowded state, West Bengal. There is no room left for a proper treated landfill.
Which state has got landfill?
West Bengal is worse off. It's probably the most densely populated state in the country now, and there is absolutely no room. And also there is this tendency of not in my backyard. Moment you try and build a thing somewhere, people say, no, not here. So what do we do about that? What do we do about plastic waste and e-waste? So I leave these queries open. I mean, I'm sure my panelists can give answers, but the audience is welcome. Please.
My question is to Mr. Nitish Mehta. Textile industry is one of the very polluting industries. So I wanted to know the green initiative in that.
We don't do a lot of work with textile industry, but I do agree with you that the amount of water that they use is huge, and that's one of the key problems that they have. And because they use a lot of surface treatment chemicals and dyes, and that makes it a bit worse to recover or recycle anything. But quickly, while there's an initiative to reduce on the water consumption, like there are initiatives with companies like Clariant and Huntsman are taking, so that you require less amount of water to get the same surfactants or things adsorbed into the cloth much more easily with using less amount of water. That's one part of it. The second is there is a initiative that is now coming up, technology already developed and implemented at one or two places, is to use supercritical CO2 to extract the dyes out of water. And then, so basically, sorry, you're using supercritical CO2 as the media instead of water to embed the dyes onto the cloth. So you don't require water at all. So it's like a waterless technology, which I think is great.
Hi, this is Richa. I work for UK-based Energy Saving Trust, and we work for a program that helps expand access to appliances in rural regions. And I thought that the panel did not sufficiently address e-waste, echoing Sanjay Mitra's closing remark. So we enable access to appliances like TVs, fans, refrigerators, solar water pumps. And at the moment, Indian households on average have access to 10 to 12 appliances per household. But as we ramp up to the Climate Agenda 2050, this is expected to increase upwards of 30 appliances per household. It's a huge problem. At the moment, in terms of GHG emissions and impact, it's not big, but if we look at the horizon 2050, it's going to be huge, especially things like refrigerant management and refrigerants leakage is huge. So we as a program want to bring aspects of circularity, recoverability, and circular economy, etc. in this process. So just wondering what's the scope and if any of you are doing anything.
Shroff, would you like to respond? Professor? Household appliances. Household appliances. She's saying the increasing use of household appliances will again pose a problem in the future, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Refrigerators to start with.
You know that for electronic waste is concerned, for the household, we have EPR. Say if you have a refrigerator, you don't have to throw it away, because today in India, any city, any village, if you are interested to dispose of the old one, refrigerator I am telling, and you want to buy a new one, you don't have problem. And moreover, you will get some incentive for taking back the old one. So it is not going into the mainstream. And moreover, today, the 2016 US management rule has implemented EPR plan for each of the manufacturer. But I am really sorry to say that most of the manufacturers have not come forward, but the government is taking initiative so that more manufacturers will come. So in that way, there are a number of initiatives. Of course, it will take some time in our country. It's not very fast process, because we are practicing in this way last 70, 80 years. Thank you.
Sir, you want to say something?
Ajay Shankar from TERI. This idea of extended producers' responsibility, do you see it going far enough to cover the whole range of manufactured products? Because the way we handle waste at the municipal level, segregation and recycling, the way it has happened in Europe, is a long way off. So would the manufacturer being given the responsibility that he must give a price for the final product before he throws it away? The price is high enough, the manufacturer then gets it and recycles it or handles it well. Is that the way to go forward in India?
Under this resource efficiency initiative that I mentioned, we have studied the scope and applicability of EPR here in India, and we have seen that indeed there are really a lot of sectors where it could be much more utilized, much more promoted. So, and in the sectors where it does exist, there is an issue of implementation, enforcement. So I think it's one of the tools, it's one of the policy tools that we should be promoting, along with a range of other things. I mean, it's not going to solve the entire problem, but it's as far as we can estimate, a very good a good component of what needs to be done. Maybe I can also just add something on the electronic waste. I mean, I think there is definitely a lot of scope to look at this. We see it across the world, not only here in India. And this comes back to my point about designing products for circularity so that it's easier to get the valuable materials out. It's easier we can do this in a less problematic way. But also what we are looking at is whether we can discuss with producers how to not design things that will automatically stop working after 2 years, as many mobile phones does, and so on. So there is a whole different set of initiatives that we have to take, and of course it's different because it's difficult because it's a global value chain. So there are many different things that needs to be agreed.
On a lighter, more frivolous note, we used to have a car which all government officers used not many years ago. That used to stop working after 2 years. Whether it was by design or accident, I don't know. You want to add something?
Yeah, I would like. Your question is very relevant. Yesterday there was an interesting session on waste management, and this was more focused on Goa and Banaras as cities. I was very happy to hear the Goa Municipal Commissioner, the kind of initiatives they have taken, and it was very nice, including the producer's responsibility. Now, 2 other thoughts I would just give. One which is easily recyclable. See, all of us take medicines, which comes typically in the aluminum foil. We take the pill out and then we throw the aluminum foil. I think there's a very good case for the either producer's responsibility or the retail chemists can be used as collection points, and then the aluminum companies can take it and then melt it and use it. So that's one. The other one, plastic waste, which has become a big menace. Now, one favorite thought that I have is that we are all familiar with vending machines. But how many things are put through vending machines? On my first visit to Japan, I had seen quite a large number of things being dispensed through the vending machine. The point is that when you buy something, it's typically in a plastic container, say a liquid. What do you want to buy? You want to buy the contents, not the container. But the container becomes the waste. So if the vending machine kind of devices can be there, and I know now water vending machines, milk vending machines have started, but if this culture can be spread, then a lot of plastic waste will be avoided. So avoid in the first place. Why give it in the first place? So that's a thought that I have.
I like to add here, you know that we don't focus on business with wastes. That is the bad part of our society. There are a lot of inputs for business in the West. If you go to Indore, I mean, Goa is not a very good model for all of Indian cities. But if you go to Indore, if you go to Bangalore, you will see that many of the guys are making business out of the waste which are generated in the city. Even in Kolkata, the waste management is not good, but through some of the processes we have made the roads and other things clean. If you come to my ward, you know there are 6,000 households. And out of those 6,000 households, our ward is collecting the dry waste only twice a week. And we are creating employment of 22 female and male people who are getting around 4,000 to 4,500 rupees per month, working from 6 to 11 o'clock in the morning. Rest of the part they can do some other job. So in that way, unless and otherwise we look into and encourage waste management as a business model, our waste management problem will never be solved. So that is the main crux of our society.
So I am Pratyush from Bharati Vidyapit, Pune. My question is for Dr. Ghosh, Mr. Ghosh. So like you mentioned in your speech, there is a culture in India that which are not useful, we throw it. So my question to you is, there is many rules and legislation imposed in the people that obey this, and like you mentioned that EPR everyone should understand. I am asking, rather than imposing all these legislations, laws, how we can take on the things to make the people realize about this waste management. Like you just mentioned now that we don't see waste management as business. So what's your say on that? How we can go ahead on internalizing that thing to the people in the community?
Nothing comes by the way. Everything comes by training and tradition. Our tradition is throwing the material after use. And nothing comes in the society unless and otherwise there is a governance. And for the governance and guidance, legislation is a must. If you look into any of the countries throughout the world who is having good waste management practice and resource circulation, you will find that that has come through legislation and awareness amongst the people. So in that way, both the things should come together. I mean, if I ask each of the participants here or the delegates here, how many of us, whenever we are talking about waste management and other things, how many of us know and read the SWM Rule 2016, which is related to day-to-day life of each of the person here? The answer will be maybe 20% of the educated people have read the SWM rules. If everybody read these rules, I am quite sure the idea of waste management will change, and that will bring the society in a better form on the waste management issues. So legislation is a must, otherwise it cannot. You cannot change the concepts unless and otherwise there is a force, there is a legislation, there is a governance. It is a must.
While I agree with you that there has to be legislation, some kind of guidelines, but that alone is not enough.
No.
How many people who are riding a two-wheeler that we see on the road, everybody knows that he has to wear a helmet, but does everyone wear? No. Some people even take pleasure that, oh, I can flout the law. So I think along with that, the education, the awareness, and in the context of industrial safety, there's a very good concept that has come, which is called behavior-based safety, where you teach the person, including his family, including his children, as to why it is important that your father or mother practices the safe practices. Similarly, smoking, anti-smoking campaigns go on, but instead of telling the father, if you tell the child that someday your father can be affected by cancer, it might have a better value. So legislation, yes, but that has to be supplemented with awareness and constant training.
Sure. Yeah. You know that for smoking, anti-smoking, people were smoking 10 years back. But when it has come on the packet that injurious to health, that also did not reduce much. But whenever a photograph of cancer is included in the packet, today you see the number of people who are smoking. It has drastically changed. And of course, it is associated with legislation. So awareness and legislation, that should go side by side. Yeah.
Hi, this is Debalina Sengupta from Texas A&M University. My question is to Nitesh. You talked about industrial ecology and process optimization as some of the tools. How much of it is right now used or even implemented in India?
Well, difficult to put a percentage to that, but while I would say that last 10 years of journey of Green Chemistry Foundation from 2009 onwards, we have seen it start from a level of resignation, cynicism, to a kind of indifference, to willingness to listen, to now a level of proactiveness. So I would say that we have still touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of implementation. some of the large companies, of the level of Excel Industries are very proactive. The small and mid-sized ones are still, sitting in the fence. The SME is the biggest problem. They are actually the backbone of the Indian chemical industry. But we are trying to have conversations with government and other stakeholders and industrial associations that what is it that we do, one, to disseminate the information about upcoming green chemistry technologies and stuff like that. And on the other side, as of right now, this country doesn't have any kind of a incentive both for industry who's implementing something good, as well as set of entrepreneurs or chemists or chemical engineers who are coming out with some innovative solutions. So as of right now, there's nothing on that front, which if it comes, could be a good,
Yeah, I can tell you that that's also the case in the US. There are no incentives at this point of time to be good. And that is one of the reasons why we haven't seen these implemented on a large scale. But I've had about 15 years of research experience in this area. And it's good to see that you have talked about it, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Srishti, and my question is addressed to Ms. Fergyman. Ma'am, you spoke about the European Green Deal, and as I understand, there are currently a lot of waste management initiatives being undertaken in the Europe, in UK and other parts of Europe, and they have been fairly successful as well. I also happen to have some research experience in this area. So I would like to understand your thoughts on what do you think are the roadblocks for implementing those kind of initiatives here in India? Would it be in terms of the infrastructure or people participation or lack of effective policies? So would just like to know your thoughts on.
Thank you very much. I think it's actually a combination of all of these things. I mean, you need an effective policy framework, that's for sure. You need effective implementation. You need technologies. You need a proper pricing system for handling these things. I mean, all of this are kind of policy tools that need to be thought together in a clever way. So many things that are existing, maybe not always completely coherent. And one of the things that I always mention and think about is that here in India, but also other places, there is this absence of more cross-cutting thinking about these issues. So that's why I like this concept of circular economy. But I mean, just to give one example, we've spoken about it many times, but for example, the issue of diesel cars. So there was, some years back, there was a ban of diesel cars in Delhi of the age of more than 10 years. That is, of course, a very good idea from some point of view, maybe from the point of view of air quality in the city, but there is also a huge problem that occurs with that, with the amounts of waste that will be generated, and maybe no adequate ways of reusing this waste and recycling some of these materials. The other issue, another example, is the solar panels. So India has a huge success with the solar parks and the rooftop solar programs, which is great for energy availability and for climate action. But there is a huge waste management issue that will come further down the line related to these panels. There are no recycling opportunities, or they're only just slowly coming up now. So again, just to give a few examples of what I mean about holistic thinking about these things. So for me, that's, apart from the individual component, I think it's really important that all different stakeholders speak together.
Sir, may I bring to this August gathering? Americans are dumping plastic bottles, Chennai, Uttarakhand and Surat. Please listen to me. Germans, very clever. They are dumping lead plate on Delhi. You cannot dispose of 1 kg film in Germany. Their rule is it must disintegrate with sunshine. Such plastic has never been made. So they have surveyed our area in India, in Delhi. There is the villages are called Aldora area where no government rule applies. Germans are dumping lead plate on Delhi. Free transport, free supply, free issue. Please tell me why 15,000 kilometers away Europe, broken mobiles, TV, computer are being dumped in Ghaziabad. We have become a dumping ground. China does not allow, Pakistan does not allow, Bangladesh does not allow. We are the dumping ground. Leave aside the local issues that you are discussing. I am bringing to your notice the ground reality of my country. Thank you.
Yes, sir. China was a dumping ground very recently, but they stopped from 2018. Similarly, because you know that why China was a dumping ground, they were making business out of the West from other countries. The similar way, India, in some of the places, this is not just a dumping ground. We are making business out of those wastes. If you see the container, the name is some other thing, but inside there are wastes. Why this is coming, this is number one. But the second thing, India should ban all the import of waste, like China. China stopped it. That's why it has become a mess with all the waste which were imported from different countries. And on the other hand, some of the countries in Asia Pacific, now they are looking into it as a business scope for them. So in that way, India must follow whatever has been done in China with respect to the dumping of waste is concerned. We have Basel Convention, but there are also flouting of Basel Convention for transboundary movement of waste. So in that way, it is really a point that there should not be any dumping of waste from other countries like European, US and others. But thing is that we must be very strict about the income of all these wastes. Otherwise, it will continue.
Okay, sir, we'll take two more questions and we'll quiet. Sir, one last
this
question.
This is a very important issue. I am not going to talk on it. Basically, I am coming to the topic of this seminar, the workshop there only. What about the climate change is, being addressed by this waste management? That is very important. We are talking about how it is being going to recycle. This is not correct. But how we are addressing the climate change? That is my concern.
You probably did not hear me clearly. I said that my company has been one of the pioneers in municipal solid waste management, which was what was being done and what is being done even today in a big way is just collect, transport and dump in a dump yard. Unattended garbage, especially the food waste, the organic waste, not only is a nuisance to the eye and to the nose and all that, it's also a big generator of methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So when you treat it at source, you are stopping that. This is what contribution we have made. It can be done. This is what I am saying.
So thank you all of you.
And that's
thank you for
greenhouse gases for climate change, as you know.
Thank you for the very productive discussion. Thanks to all my panelists for very wonderful interventions. Please, Martin.
Thank you so much. Go to your photographs now.